All right, but I want to start today's show talking about a dear friend of mine and a friend I'm sure Marcellus knows him, Mike Ornstein. Mike Ornstein is a guy with a long history in the National Football League. Mike, I think, started coming to a little notoriety when he worked for Al Davis and the Raiders organization. The last few years, or the last decade and a half or so, he's been closely associated with the New Orleans Saints and Sean Payton. Anybody with a connection to the National Football League knows who Mike Ornstein is. Listen, Mike's been involved in some controversy, but I think that most people connected to the NFL consider Mike a great asset to the NFL, a stand-up guy. Mike and I started out as adversaries. He was very close and worked with as a marketing agent for Marcus Allen when Marcus played in Kansas City. Marcus and I got into it, and that meant me and Mike Ornstein got into it back in those days. But now I consider Mike a good friend, and we talked this morning about sports and the NFL draft and how the NFL is moving forward. And Mike, if you know anything about him, and again, most of you don't, but people connected to the NFL do, Mike has struggled with his health in the last few years. And there was a time, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, where we thought Mike was going to leave us, but he has since rebounded. And it led to a conversation we were having this morning, Mike and I, about, hey, Mike expressing to me, look, man, I probably got 7, 8, 9, 10 more summers left in my life. This coronavirus, shutting everything down. I'm not living right now. I'm existing. Mike's divorced. He has a kid. His ex-wife comes to visit him from time to time. His son, I think, checks on him every day. But Mike is a guy that has lived his life in airport, city to city. If there was a big football event, Mike was always there. Mike is a guy that has lived on the move. He's a social animal. Mike's in his late 60s. He raises the question of, how long should we go with this quarantine? I want to live out my golden years. I don't want to exist in my golden years. This is day 32 for Mike in quarantine. And I bring all this up because Adam Schefter of ESPN, who I think all of us clearly are friends with and have a great deal of respect for, Adam Schefter said on ESPN that he thinks it's basically irresponsible for the NFL to go on with this draft. I think the direct quote was, quite frankly, he found it cold-hearted for the NFL to continue with this draft. And I couldn't disagree with Adam more respectfully. And I think in talking to Mike Ornstein this morning, it really came into vision and full fruition for me why I disagree with Adam Schefter here and the people that think we should shut it down and stop what we're doing. We can't do that. And this is not the first time America and the globe has dealt with a pandemic outbreak that can kill you, can really do damage to you. I was talking to my mother this week about polio. From the 1920s throughout the 1950s, there were massive polio outbreaks across America. At one time, we had a president, President Roosevelt, who suffered from polio and was crippled by polio. It was also a disease you could get from contact with people with polio. I read stories this morning about football games that went on and transpired, college football games, when there were polio outbreaks in those cities or affecting those teams. I think it would be a mistake to shut things down. I think that football and sports should, as best they can, continue to move forward. I think sports play an important role in moving us forward in this crisis. And so I couldn't disagree with Adam Schefter more. And so I want to bring Mark Schlereth in from Denver. Obviously, Marcellus is here. And we're going to have a discussion about what role sports will play in continuing to move us forward. The only thing I want to just ask you all is we're not pretending to be experts. We're not coronavirus experts, but we are just a group of men who have opinions about this, who live in the sports world, who, again, don't hold us to expert standards. We're not trying to be experts. But Marcellus, I want to start with you. what role do you think? I think sports is going to play a critical role in moving us forward as a society. Is that something you agree with, disagree with? I just don't think we can shut down things forever.
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult blanket statement to make, no matter what side you're on. If you're eager to get back things back to normal, or if you're a person that's saying, hey, let's be uber cautious in these moments, because we know what's going on and there's a lot of unknown out there. It's interesting that I disagree with Adam in terms of getting the NFL draft going and trying to get back to normalcy in terms of the NFL, because this is okay for the NFL to still conduct business as usual in terms of the draft. Adam referenced that there won't be any OTAs, there won't be any offseason, and now we shouldn't have the draft. Well, I'm here to tell Adam that when I got drafted in 1997, we didn't have OTAs. We didn't have an off-season program. We showed up for training camp. And I think we had a mini camp, and even that wasn't mandatory for, it seemed like, everyone, because I didn't see full attendance. That said, football can still be played without this offseason being normal, especially the draft. That can still go on. But I think if you're a person who is directly affected by the coronavirus or will be directly affected, including those who have lost loved ones or will lose loved ones. I've had a friend who lost his aunt in the last couple of days, and he had a different complexion to this conversation than he did a week or two ago. So with that said, it depends on how it lands in your life, as sports is a distraction, but the attraction is your normal day-to-day life. And if this consumes you because you lost a loved one or you're affected by it, I think that you look at sports entirely different than someone who hasn't been affected.
Yeah, I think that sports is I think that sports is a great connector. And one of the things that I find really interesting, and I disagree with Adam, and I totally agree with you, Jason, is that this helps move us forward. Now, listen, you have to adhere to the CDC regulations and all those things, but the draft can certainly be done without the hoopla, without the fanfare, and without all the people. You're connected. We are completely connected together through technology. And I will say this, never before have we been more connected as a people through technology. We spend the entirety of our lives right here on a 4-inch iridescent screen, right? And less connected as people. That's an issue that we have. And I will tell you that football and sports in general is a great connector. I had the opportunity to go sit at the Super Bowl and watch right from, the 40-yard line in a section of Kansas City Chiefs fans. And I got to tell you, being a former player for Mike Shanahan, I was rooting hard for the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan. And I was talking so much trash right up till 3rd down and 15 when WASP was called and Patrick Mahomes made one of the most incredible plays in Super Bowl history. And I've got to tell you, at the end of the day, with a bunch of 30-year-old Kansas City fans, we connected as people, man. There were hugs all the way around. Even though we were talking trash to one another, we had a blast. And the connectivity that sports brings to this country is what helps heal us. And we saw it in 9/11, and I think we'll see it again throughout this coronavirus issue that we're having.
Look, I'm sure Adam Schefter has a relationship with Mike Ornstein, like myself and many people in the media. I would love for Adam to talk to guys like Mike, again, because we are very blessed. And Mike and I talked about this morning in terms of when I'm talking about Mark Schlereth, Marcellus Wiley, Jason Whitlock. We're blessed that we actually have something to do. Fox Sports is continuing on. We're doing our television show. We have a purpose every morning when we get up. That's very important to a guy like Mike Ornstein. He has spent his entire life on the go, doing things, being productive, helping people move along in their careers. And when you take that away in his golden years, and he's sitting there at home thinking, how many, 30 more days, 60 more days, 90 more days of just existing rather than living, I think it's a point of view and a perspective we're going to have to consider. And I think the NFL, again, we've heard Mike Florio criticize, why is the NFL doing free agency? Now we're hearing Adam Schefter. These guys are two respected voices that have covered the NFL for a long time. Why are they doing the draft? And I actually think the NFL is being very responsible here in trying to provide a sense of normalcy and not just giving in to all the fear. The decision making that I think a lot of people are making and are forcing on others is make decisions based out of fear. And I just don't think that's a healthy way to make decisions. The NFL needs to remain responsibly bold and moving forward as best they can responsibly. And I just think the NFL draft is a no-brainer to do right now. Marcellus, I'm just telling you, as a kid, when you go back to being a prospect, 21, 22 years old, you think Joe Burrow and these guys want the draft delayed?
No, not at all. Obviously, they're incentivized to get things rolling and get things back to normal as fast as possible. And that's why it's very difficult to make a blanket statement for everyone in terms of how they're receiving this. But in terms of leadership in the NFL and the commissioner, you have to return to that normalcy sooner than later. I will say one thing, I guess, in pushback to Ornstein, who says right now in my twilight years, hey, I need a purpose. I don't think that purpose needs to be so much out your house or external. It's certainly a luxury, and we have that luxury as well, but it's not a necessity. Let me tell you, when I was growing up, I didn't have all the external resources around. And I remember vividly one time I didn't have a way to get to the gym. And I had a friend who was working out with me, and he was the only guy who had a car, and he wasn't available. And you know what I realized in that moment? This is crazy. Because I feel the moment like it happened yesterday. I remember wanting to lift weights and hit the track and do everything that was scheduled and programmed. Instead, I realized I couldn't get to those places, and I just looked around my apartment. I looked around my apartment complex. I just looked in my vicinity and realized, oh, these stairs right here, that's going to be my stairs. Me lifting weights, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hit this jailhouse workout, whatever I have to do to get through this. Because if you're a believer, you're a person that knows this too shall pass. And this is different than anything that we've seen before. I just want people to really understand this virus lives on objects for up to weeks. This is in the vicinity of you, 6 feet or more in terms of being airborne. Polio was through feces and direct contact and bad sanitation areas. Like, when we get into the details of what we're dealing with right now and the aggregation of all of us, that's going to be a very sticky, tough decision to make. When do we all aggregate? But for now, we can all sit in our own comfort of home and watch the draft return and be back to normal in that respect.
Mark, we got 60 seconds. I'll give you a final thought.
Well, my final thought is this. I've always said, and I had this meeting with Roger Goodell, don't let people who hate football set the agenda for football. Hey, go do what you have to do to put this draft together, because I think it's the right thing to do, and we move forward together, and it is a distraction, and I think it's a good distraction. So I applaud him, and as far as complaining about it, he said he put the moratorium out. Don't complain about this. You're right, because everybody's got issues. Deal with it. We're going to be the NFL, and we're going to lead in this, and I applaud the NFL for doing it.
Hey, great points, both of you guys. Really strong stuff, Marcellus. Mark, I just want to be clear. I'm sure if Adam hears this, Mark does not think Adam Schefter hates football. I'm sure of that. But he is right.
I know Adam.
People that do hate football. Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. And be sure to check out more of the best clips from Speak For Yourself, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.